Well, I'm happy to say that we're almost there, and I might have to elaborate on that a little bit. I'm almost to my new home. Over the last few weeks, I've been packing and hauling boxes. Every morning I had this routine. My friend has a Jeep, and it holds a lot more than the little Toyota Corolla. So every morning I packed the boxes the night before, put the boxes in the Jeep, load up the child, take the child to the school, take the Jeep to the new house, have it wait for me, get in the small car, go to my job, come back, unload the Jeep into the house, go get the child, take the Jeep to the house, and then pack again. Oh, after dinner, and whatever else had to happen. Yesterday, about 14 friends came over with trucks, vans, and cars, and hauled almost everything in our old home of 1,350 square feet. Very small little house, to our new home that is over 3,200 square feet. So I ask you, why does it look like chaos in my new home? One friend decided that her gift was to unpack the kitchen and put the kitchen together. That was her spiritual gift. And she said, you don't have enough cabinets in your kitchen, right? So why does it happen that when you take everything out of the cabinets and drawers, they sort of balloon up like Macy's, Thanksgiving Day balloons, and all of a sudden you have more stuff than you ever thought you had? Thanks to God, Rosie had a sleepover last night, so she was not home in the chaos. So I needed to manage taking care of myself, which was quite enough. Thank you. I figured out my dinner and how to get around the house, and by the time everybody had left the house, I was in zombie mode. Has anybody ever been in zombie mode? Yeah, this last couple of weeks, quite frequently. So, you walk into one room and you look around and you can't find a thing, and then you walk into another room and you look around and you can't find that thing you were looking for, and then you forget what you were looking for. That's zombie mode. In my work as a hospice chaplain, I spend time with people who have an experience of walking and not remembering, people who feel confused almost every day. There's a name that's given to these places where my patients live. They're called memory care units. Indeed, the staff in these units care for people who have lost their memory and need help moving from one task to another, from one room to another, from 1 minute to another. I can't imagine what it would be like to feel like you've moved to a new house every single day. And certainly it's not like that for all people with memory deficits, but for many it is a challenge. We've probably all known people who no longer remember the recent past, but they still tune in to the good old days, and still enjoy and love the good old days. Years ago, I visited with a woman in a facility. She was living in a memory care unit. I don't remember if they used that term in those days, but at any rate, she at one time had been a church organist, and she was just a delightful person. She came alive whenever she heard an old hymn, but she wasn't able to play anymore. Over the months we came to know each other. She never remembered my name, but she got the idea that I was somebody that she knew. So we had a ritual that went something like this. I would arrive at the facility, we would make eye contact, we would go to her room, we would pull over the bedside table. I had a communion kit. I would put a doily on the bedside table and open up my communion kit and pull out the communion wafers, and then the little bottle of grape juice, and then 2 tiny little cups so we could share that together. And then I read something from the scripture, and sometimes we sang a song that she remembered. And then I prayed, and then we shared communion, and it was very simple. It was very familiar and comforting to her, I think. One December afternoon, I went to the facility for our usual ritual and began the unpacking and the setting up with her. And then something different happened. You know how it is when you have a certain way that it goes, and then something changes it. This time, the music therapist from my agency arrived as we were taking our kit apart. And I explained to her what we were doing, and she asked if she could join us. And fortunately, there were plenty of the little tiny communion wafers. I don't know if you remember, there was a story once about there being enough bread. Remember that story? Anyway, the patient was familiar with the musician, and so she was very comforted by another familiar face. She didn't remember the name, but she wasn't bothered by her presence. So we went on with our ritual. And as I finished our setup, the therapist sat on the other bed in the room and started strumming Christmas songs. She had this pink guitar. And you know, I don't know the names for guitar, but you know where the circle is in the guitar, right? Hers is not a circle, it's a heart. So it's just so dear, and people, of course, love it. And it was just about perfect. And then we began the ritual of scripture, and the music therapist came over and sat next to the patient on her bed. And we shared communion, and then it was time for the song, and we decided on Silent Night and started singing together, and our dear patient remembered every single word of Silent Night. It was a very powerful time sharing the ritual with our patient and with each other, and it was as if there was no need to say anything about it. You know, we didn't have to say, well, that meant this, or that felt good because. We just got it together, and we didn't need to say anything. We were all kind of like happy cats, like that was great, that wasn't that wonderful. But I do have to say that a couple of us had a tear or two in our eyes. Very powerful time. It seemed that the patient really realized the holiness and her wholeness as we sat there together. And now, years later, she's no longer living on the earth. Sometimes I run into the music therapist in the hallways at work, just walking around with her pink guitar. And sometimes we stop and say, remember that time we shared together? Because it was so rich, the best Christmas service that year. Without too much analysis, we can all appreciate why that was a powerful service. Together we remembered something. The patient couldn't talk about it, but the song and the feeling were within her, and they showed up when they were invited to be expressed. This is the power of memory and the power of ritual. Last week, our entire country celebrated, or at least benefited from Memorial Day. Many workplaces were closed, no mail that day. People had an extra day off. Some people went out of town, or they went to a special event, the Folklife Festival. Some people stayed home and packed boxes. I wonder if there are any people today that we could acknowledge and honor as our veterans in our community. Could you stand up if you've served in the military during your lifetime? And let's applaud for them and thank them. Whether or not you served in the military, whether someone dear to you did, we know this. Hundreds of thousands of people have served our country, have fought for freedom, have dedicated their lives, years of their lives, their strength and their spirits to us and to every American citizen by their service. And it is something for us to remember, not only by enjoying a long weekend, but by taking the time to acknowledge powerful acts undertaken for you and for each one of us.